Bible says mankind's first home was a garden paradise called Eden. Interpreting the section of Genesis which describes the location of Eden. A passage in the Old Testament states that Eden was watered by a stream which rose out of the garden and branched out into 4 rivers: the Tigris, Euphrates, Pishon, and Gihon. Where is the 4th river mentioned in Genesis? The desert explodes with life and color. If we take Genesis as a mixture of revelation and allegory, then it is likely the author had a real place in mind when he described Eden. You might have been familiar with the Sumerian legend of the semi-divine king named Gilgamesh. In search of immortality, Gilgamesh travels to the land of Dilmun. There, Gilgamesh learns that he must pursue the flower of immortality, which is found at the bottom of the sea. By eating the flower, Gilgamesh will become immortal. The story doesn't end happily. A serpent appears, steals the flower, and eats it. Man's old adversary once again robs him of everlasting life. The biblical similarities are obvious. It would be tragic to lose the Garden of Eden a second time. God cast Adam and Eve from the garden and gave mankind a legacy of earthly toil. There is another legacy, a longing to rediscover the place where it all began.
Presents information based in part on theory and conjecture. The producer's purpose is to suggest some possible explanation, but not necessarily the only ones to the mysteries we will examine.
Okay, tape rolling, anytime you want.
The demons squeal in sheer delight. It's you they spy, so plump. For though the groove is hard to beat, still you stand with frozen feet. You try to run, to scream, but no more sun you'll ever see. For evil reaches from the crypt to crush you in its icy grip.
Thank you for listening to the Secret Society of Stuff. Robin and Chad.
Society stuff is hungry.
The foulest stench is in the air. The funk of 40,000 years. And grisly ghouls from every tomb are closing in to seal your doom. And though you fight to stay alive, your body starts to shiver. For no mere mortal can resist the evil of the thriller.
Oh, I'm still here.
Okay.
Cool. So something that I remember reading about you is that you you discovered the Garden of Eden.
Yes.
In Tanzania.
Right.
and I have to know more?
Well, gosh, that was back in 2014, I think. I started looking into that. I used the Bible and the Hebrew form to look for the various clues about where the four rivers went and what river supplied that amount of water. And I had to use my knowledge of the Earth diameter having changed. It's now about 25% bigger in diameter than it was then. So in other words, it enlarged by a third of its diameter due to an asteroid impact. The big flood was caused by an asteroid that impacted on the east coast of India when it was still extended down into the Indian Ocean. And the impact shoved all of India up into China to form the Himalaya mountain range. That's when we have seashells and stuff on top of the Himalayas. You can see the map of the mud map of the Indian Ocean. You can see where Sri Lanka, the tip of India, was located before the impact. And once I put the Earth back together again and then started tracing the rivers, I found that two of the rivers were broken, the Euphrates and the Tigris. All that we know of them today is the tail end of where they were, not where they started. And so Tigris came through a mountain range that is now formed after the impact, but through a mountain range over in Iraq, I think it was. And the rest of that, if you were to plot it today, would be out into the Indian Ocean. Yeah, I have a website where I show pictures of all this if you want to tell your listeners to look there.
Absolutely. It's standeyo.com, right?
Yes, and once you get there, you'll see a YouTube sign at the top right of the page, and you'll see in blue letters, show images. And that's where I put things on there in slide form. Some I never take off, like the Garden of Eden. I leave that there all the time. And you can see pictures of the Garden of Eden if you click slide 32. And that'll take you to the actual discovery, using what the Scripps Institute sent me as far as a new topography and bathymetry map of the world. And then started a long search in the library there at West Australia University, looking at maps and military maps. In those days, we didn't have internet, so it was a long, hard slog. In 1989, I published my findings where I traced the Garden of Eden as far back as the Danakil Plains in northeast Africa. And I found the four rivers joined there, but I couldn't find the exact start of the river that made them. And so a few years passed, and in 2014 I picked up the search again, and with internet and Google Earth and the Scripps Institute data, I was able to see that there's this huge river that comes out of the Great East African Rift out of Africa down to make the four rivers that the Danakil Plain where it split. And so by tracing it mile by mile, and I did that down close on the map up to the starting point, I came to a place called the Ngoro Plateau. And that's a plateau that the southern kind of end of it is a great, huge crater, 10 miles in diameter, of a collapsed volcano. Come to find out, I thought, well, I've never heard of this place. It's out in the middle of nowhere, it looks like. So I looked it up, and it's called Africa's Garden of Eden. And there it was. It was later in 2018. Some friends of mine financed an expedition for us to go over there and actually film and then talk to the Toga tribe historian and to the Maasai historian to get the information from them that God had come down into the Ngoro crater and had created man there and then left and went back up in the sky.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
God.
I tell you, if your hair's not standing up on your neck now, you're not listening.